Good evening, everybody. My name is Stephen Rabinowitz.
My name is Jay Kaplan.
I'm Anthony Strait.
This is the On the Sports Lines, our supersized basketball edition. Before we get into talking about nonsensical things for 2 hours, I mean, to most of you, it's nonsensical. To us, it is. We were promoting this 2 weeks ago, and I had false advertising. My bad. So lost my mother-in-law a little under 2 weeks ago due to breast cancer. Last week, it's been tough. It's nice to get back to the normalcy of basketball, and I'm glad to do this with two of my closest friends, or at least one of my closest friends, and a guy who's been considered my partner the whole entire time. But
I'm not quite sure how to take that.
That is true. I actually probably should have rethought that.
That was half a compliment and half a dig.
Half a compliment, half a dig, and half a bad wording. But that's why you don't write those things on there, because it can actually come out well. But, guys, we have a lot to talk about, so let's get started. So tonight, it's March, which in 2021 means a ton of things. The NBA All-Star break, a little bit different from previous years. Conference Championship Week, normalcy. And Oprah Winfrey interviewing Harry and Meghan and our talk about how the royal family system is a sham in Britain. Our guys will give you two of those three things on Analyst Watch tonight. I might give you some on the third thing. I don't know. We'll talk more at 11 o'clock. Anyway, the opener refers to a topic that came up about a week or two ago when everyone's favorite philosophic mind, Kyrie Irving, tweeted Kobe's image on the NBA logo saying, "Gotta happen. I don't care what anyone says. Black Kings rules the league." I think that's exactly how it's said, minus the pronunciation, minus the grammatical error, because, you know, Kyrie. Saturday, Adam Silver responded with a simple response.
Close enough.
Saturday, Adam Silver responded with a simple response: "No ongoing discussions. Not the right time to change the logo." You know what? That's said a lot more easily and could be better said in person than on Instagram. Although I would like to have seen some Photoshop again. Anyway, quickly, Jay, let's start. Right time to finally change this or not?
Look, I understand where Kyrie is coming from with this. Kobe is he's close to Kobe. They were, very close when Kobe was around. And Kobe is the player his generation looked up to, patterned their games after, wanted to be like. And there is no doubt that black players, who make up 74% of the league, not only built this league, but are responsible for the heights it has reached. But changing the NBA logo is a much larger conversation beyond whether or not it still makes sense for Jerry West to continue to be the logo, which, by the way, the NBA has actually never officially 100% confirmed. The association's public stance to this day is that the logo is nothing more than an anonymous basketball player's silhouette, even though West has talked about this several times over the years. What was interesting to me, guys, when I was researching this, The Athletic did a feature on this topic at the end of February. And the story behind how the logo came to be what it currently is was pretty interesting. Back in 1969, Walter Kennedy, who was the NBA commissioner at the time, hired a brand identity consultant. Isn't that very 2020 even? Named Alan Siegel to come up with a new logo for the league. As Siegel told ESPN's The Undefeated in June of 2017, Kennedy wanted something that would resemble Major League Baseball's red, white, and blue design. So Siegel looked at a bunch of various, players of pictures of players: West, Kareem, Wilt, John Havlicek, among others, while coming up with the concept. In the end, he went with West dribbling because, and here's the quote, "it was elegant and classic," and because West had the resume at the time, and it was impressive enough to warrant the silhouette status. The process was so informal, guys, that West was completely unaware that he was a pivotal part of it. And now West, who now works as a consultant for the Clippers, has been universally known as the logo for quite some time. The LA Times actually had a lot to do with that. They ran a piece back in 2010 where Siegel revealed the story behind the logo for the first time, and it changed everything. And here's something else that those who want the logo to change can use to make their case. West has long said he would be just fine if the NBA changed the logo. Quote, "I didn't find out about it until, the late commissioner told me about it, Walter Kennedy." Again, it's flattering, but it's also, I think, if I were the NBA, I would be embarrassed about it. I really would. Now, West, this is West talking to Rachel Nichols on The Jump back in April of 2017. And when Nichols asked him why he felt that way, the Hall of Famer said as follows: "I don't like to do anything to call attention to myself, and when people say that He's the logo. That's just not who I am, period. If they would want to change it, I wish they would. In many ways, I wish they would, end quote. Look, I agree with, I think it's long past time the conversation, has to be had. The era we're currently in pretty much demands it. But with all due respect to Kobe, there are other legendary black players who are just as famous and who have done just as much for the NBA, and in some cases more than the late Black Mamba. How about Bill Russell in a defensive stance? Oscar Robertson, you guys have seen that iconic picture of him spread-legged holding the ball in his hands after grabbing a rebound. That would make a great logo. How about Kareem releasing his patented skyhook? Dr. J in midfield, one of the famous four. Oh, and how could we argue about arguably the greatest player ever, Michael Jordan, who West himself suggested should replace him as the NBA logo? Look, whether it ends up being Kobe or one of the guys I mentioned or someone else, this genie is not going back in the bottle. Kyrie's IG post getting 1.2 million likes and a petition to use Bryant's image as the next iteration of the logo has gotten more than 3.2 million signatures, plus the support of Bryant's widow, Vanessa. Pretty much that basically tells Adam Silver, kind of got to have this conversation. As the old song goes, the times they are changing. And the NBA has shown a willingness to change with them both on and off the court. This is no different. Commissioner Silver, Jerry West is very happy to give up the ball. It's your shot. Don't miss.
Well, I mean, I respect Kyrie's opinion because he personally knew Kobe Bryant. So he's talking from a personal place. But the change in the Kobe Bryant is, like you just mentioned, Jay, there's so many all-time great players and legends that came prior to Kobe Bryant, not to mention some of the current generation that are just as changing the game, changing the sport. You think about LeBron James, you think of Steph Curry, you think of some of these players today, Kevin Durant, for example, also. And, of course, I remember I joked many years ago, if they never changed the logo to Michael Jordan, they're not going to change it to anybody else because clearly when Jordan retired, the NBA ratings dipped completely and a lot of casual fans lost interest. Look, you understand this though, and the reactions to Kyrie's IG post. Kobe's death was just a little over a year ago, so it's still fresh in a lot of people's minds. The tragedy behind it still draws a lot of raw emotions when you think about Kobe and his impact and the fact that he was taken away far too soon for all of us. And I understand that, but changing the logo, I think that's something that it should be a universal conversation because and the NBA has honored Kobe Bryant quite a bit, since his untimely passing. The All-Star Game format has actually been changed in honor of Kobe Bryant, particularly the fourth quarter of games with a set score that you had to go to. Remember last year's All-Star Game? One side award number 2 in honor of Gigi Bryant, the other side 24. The All-Star Game MVP has been renamed in Kobe's honor. So there are, and I talked about how the city of Los Angeles made 8/24 Kobe Bryant Day in the city of Los Angeles. And I remember last year I didn't even get into it with a few people because they were talking about renaming the Staples Center in Kobe's honor. And I told them, you can't do that. Staples has a contract with the city of Los Angeles for naming rights. And there's 3 other teams that plays there. So you would have to get consent from all the professional teams that play there to change that. But I always talked about like the plaza outside Staples Center. They can do something about that. That would make a little more sense. So even naming the basketball court and Kobe's honor says we see that. See, for example, it's like the Pat Summitt court. Yeah, we see this all the time. But the logo, the change to Kobe Bryant, I feel like it's coming from still fans and players and people who knew him personally from a place of grievance still. Because, like I said, it's been a year, and for a lot of people, including myself, it still doesn't feel realistic. I think about the night before LeBron passed on the all-time scoring list. His last tweet was congratulating LeBron and talking about taking the game to the next level for the next generation. And before you know, he was gone. So, I mean, like I said, I respect I give Kyrie Irving a lot of grief in recent history. But, but in this case, I respect his opinion. I don't think they should change the logo to Kobe, at least not without a general consent across the board. I'm talking about players, owners, marketing representatives. You got to understand this too. It's a business. You got marketing, you got all this other things you have to take into consideration. So I think it's a conversation that should be put on a shelf for right now, but definitely something to go back and to be visited sometime in the near future.
I think you mentioned everything pretty well. I was going to mention the history lesson, but I figured Jay had that kind of in the back of the hand, how the logo isn't really any one player, although it is Jerry West, but it hasn't been. First of all, I would never change it to anything that's of an older era, too. I would either change it to MJ, Kobe, or nothing. And simply put, I want to end this right here because we have a lot of more important stuff to talk about today. I don't respect Kyrie for bringing up a topic that no one actually even thought about until Kyrie said, hey, maybe I should talk about this because this will always get views and it'll get hits. Also, by the way, how about Kobe Bryant Day? I know we have the All-Star game already, but maybe just make it, maybe if not 8/24, do something during the season where everyone gets to wear 8 or 24. Maybe do something like that as kind of a symbolic gesture. But I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to drop the mic very quickly. Do you think the NBA ever wants someone as the logo who was accused of sexual assault? Just saying, there's not a if there's no necessary need to change the logo, and let's admit, there is no necessary need to change the logo. Why make a controversial decision? Because eventually, some people are going to complain. You don't have to do that. I'm not saying bury Kobe's legacy. Kobe will be remembered, and what Kobe's contributions are still remembered to this day. But go to change the logo. Make sure you kind of know what you're trying to do. I think in a PR sense, this is something that should be talked about. I think the logo should change to MJ for a more modern feel. But for this point, leave it alone. That's just saying. All right. Let's shop local with the NBA. And we always love it when you shop local here on OTSL. We always support small businesses around the area. The New York Knicks currently sit at 5th place in the Eastern Conference. No, I did not mispronounce 15th. I said 5th. F-I-F, 5th. They are only one of 5 teams with a winning record in the Eastern Conference at 19 and 18. We're going to do Player Watch with Anthony. We're going to do Stat Watch with Jay. And we're going to do Coach Watch with Wah. Anthony, give me our Player Watch for the New York Knicks. There are 35 games left in the season. They're more than halfway done.
Yeah, it's good to talk about the Knicks in a positive manner, like the All-Star break. They actually had meaningful basketball in the second half of the season. It's been a long time, several years to get that. But my starter watch in the second half is R.J. Barrett, and we know about Julius Randle, the All-Star who represented the Knicks this past weekend. But R.J. Barrett is kind of the guy who was picked last season to be that foundation, that building block, and he had an up and down rookie season, to say the least. Sometimes he was good, sometimes he's not. This season, you do see steps in the right direction. You're starting to see him improve in subtle ways. His points per game is up 16. He's averaging 16.5 points a game, averaging 6 rebounds, 3 assists a game. His shooting percentage has gone up a little bit. It's at 34.5% compared to last year, where he only shot 32% as a rookie. Also, you think about the NFL. At the month of February was his best shooting month by far in his career, and he ended the month of February back-to-back nights with 24 against the Indiana Pacers and 21 against Detroit. In 14 games, he shot 47% from the three-point line, and that's going to be big for a Knicks team that has had its moments and struggled with offensively and struggling to shoot the basketball. The one area I would love to see RJ improve upon is the free throw line. You think about that game where he scored 24 against Indiana. He missed 2 very crucial free throws, that left the game open for Indiana to kind of come back and try to tie that game. For a guy who drives the ball a lot, RJ has got to improve that free throw percentage. I think he's hovering just around 70%. It's got to be a little better. You know, he's done a good job of taking the mid-range shots and driving to the basket, being a little more aggressive this season and taking what the defense give him. But one of the keys is he's going to have to improve the free throw percentage. He has improved dramatically as an on-ball defender. We saw last year he struggled with that. So that's in the right direction. He was named, at least ceremoniously, to the Young Stars game as a member of the World's team. Even obviously they didn't play the game because of the condensed scheduling. But it steps in the right direction, and the Knicks are going to make a run in the second half of the season for a playoff berth. They're going to need a lot. They're going to need the same progression from R.J. Barrett. Tom Thibodeau actually cut down his minutes in the last month. You know, he was struggling in the fourth quarter. He wasn't, I don't know, in the final 5 minutes. Kind of played his way back into that final 5-minute rotation. It's been a key part to the Knicks' success. But he's going to have to continue to take those steps forward because you understand Julius Randle's an all-star. He's going to command a lot of attention. And the Knicks are going to need a second scorer night in and night out, especially for a team that's near the bottom of the league in offense.
Well, he's also going to be first of all, I want to see RJ hit over 40% from three. He's done that since 2021 started, and the Knicks need another three-point shooter other than Julius Randle because, as you've mentioned, this team, once they get into cold streaks, sometimes when you feel like when they're down 10, if you saw multiple times, I think last week versus the Spurs, they're down like 40. So that's kind of a problem.
We saw the game against Orlando a couple weeks back, too.
Orlando is an even bigger example. When they're cold, they are ridiculously cold. But, and I think you're going to see him out of the final 5-minute lineup again for Tibbs, because Tibbs and patience are two things that don't go into the same sentence. All right, Jay, so we've been off for 2 weeks. I need a stat for the Knicks, and I need it to be twice as good as what you would have thought it would be a week ago. So precious.
All right, here's the stat. Now, here's the stat, okay? 20, 10, 5, and 40. You ready? Any thoughts?
Yeah.
I think I know what it is, but go.
I'll give it to you. All right. As Rabbi said, guys, don't look now, but the Knicks are actually over 500 at 19 and 18 and have that fifth. Rabbi, did you have a problem fully spelling out fifth, or you just –
You never watched Chappelle's show, have you?
No, I haven't. So, okay. I just wanted to make sure there was method behind that.
It was, yes, it wasn't me not knowing the spelling of fit. I have a clear understanding of the English language.
All right. Sometimes I wonder, but I'm glad to hear it. And a large reason for, that record and that lofty spot in the standings is all-star forward Julius Randle with a stat line of 23.2 points per game, 11.1 rebounds per game, and 5.5 assists per game, and 40.8% from three. He's one of two players in the history of the NBA to average 20 points per game, 10 rebounds per game, 5 assists per game, and shoot 40% or better from three. You guys care to guess who the other guy is?
Steph Curry.
Nope. Think of rebounds. Remember.
Oh, rebounds.
2010 5 and shooting 40%. Nope.
Moses Malone?
Moses never passed that well.
That's true. No clue.
Anthony, you out of guesses?
Let's see. 40%? Yeah, I'm out of guesses. Can't do it anymore.
You guys are going to smack yourselves when I tell you. It's Larry Bird.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you're both going, I should have gotten that. Okay, here's some other numbers that have stood out to me. The hallmark of this Knicks team is defense, as we've discussed. Number 2 in the NBA in defensive efficiency, number 1 in points per game allowed, which is no surprise for a Tom Thibodeau coach team. But the evolution of Randle as both a primary scorer and facilitator has allowed the Knicks offense to actually put up enough points on the board most nights. What's interesting to me so far in terms of the Knicks record is that they've lost 12 games by more than 10 points and have won 13 games by more than 10 points. What's even more interesting is that most of those 10-point or more losses came within the first 20 games of the season, and most of those 10-point or more wins have come in the last 17 games, proof that the team is picking up what Coach Tibbs is putting down, and being all in on his way of doing things is starting to show positive results. What's interesting is that Randle leads the team both in three-point attempts and three-pointers made. Alec Burks is the only other Knick shooting over 40% beyond the arc, though Derrick Rose, Emmanuel Quickly, Reggie Bullock, and R.J. Barrett have all taken at least 100 threes and are making between 35 and 38% of them, which is saying something considering that this team is 29th in three-point attempts at only 27.8 a game. Think about that for a second. How far have we come in the evolution of the three-point shot that is 29th in the NBA in attempts per game? Though they are 12th in the league in percentage at 37.2, so they do knock down a decent amount when they do shoot them. The Knicks are also number 3 in the NBA in rebounding, averaging 46.5 per game. Randle's 11.1 leads the way. But Nerlens Noel, Mitchell Robinson, and R.J. Barrett are all averaging at least 6 per game, and we know that rebounding goes hand in hand with defense. The big question is whether the Randle and the Knicks can sustain this production for the rest of the season. They start the second half with games against the Bucks, the Sixers, the Nets, and the Thunder. They need to at least beat OKC. Though if the Sixers are minus Embiid and Simmons due to the COVID issue that kept them out of the All-Star game, that game actually becomes very winnable for the Knicks. After that, the rest of the schedule is just as brutal with a lot of tough games against playoff contenders. Randle's the focus of the offense, so a lot of the Knicks' success for the remainder of the season will depend on him keeping up this current stat line. But Barrett needs to be a consistent Robin to Randle's Batman, as Anthony said. Robinson, when he gets back from injury, needs to get back to being that monster rim protector and rebounder that he was. Quickly needs to continue to be the spark off the bench that this team needs. And Rose needs to continue to be that veteran presence at point and why he was to begin with. Look, defense is going to be the Knicks' calling card and should keep them competitive in every game, but they need to improve on an offense that's 29th in points per game and 23rd in efficiency. And as I said, it all starts with Randle continuing to keep company with Larry Bird.
Yeah, and I'm not 100% sure if that's going to continue, but we'll see what happens. I think the one thing I'm noticing with Coach Tibbs first is going to be we've seen the bloom start really well, especially in Minnesota when he made the playoffs, I believe, in his second year with that young nucleus. And then the floor dropped down, and the floor dropped out quickly. Now, Jay mentioned that 4-game road trip that's coming up right after the break. Thursday, Milwaukee, Saturday, OKC, Monday, Brooklyn, Tuesday, Philadelphia, who most likely will have Embiid and Simmons back. I don't think the contact tracing is going to be too long. I don't think they're getting any more haircuts anytime soon.
Let's hope not, but if they're not, I blame you. You jinxed them.
I jinx everybody. But the beginning of May is going to be another. They have a 6-game road trip that's Houston, Memphis, Denver, Phoenix, and both LA teams. So that is just brutal. But this is a team that really hasn't had too much of a losing streak. They had a 5-game losing streak right after they started the season 5-5, lost 8 of 11, but then they really just continued to improve, and they really haven't had any real long losing streaks since then. Another thing I've noticed is after that 4-game trip, that minimum they do need to win the OKC game, and I think they can luck out and win one of the other 3. They would just take that to the bank right now and stay 1 game over instead of what could be 3 games under. They have Orlando once, Washington twice on a 4-game homestand, and in the middle of that, there's a game against Philadelphia, which will be, I believe, the last time they play them this regular season. That could get them back on the right track quickly. But I want to note a little bit of caution. That brings us back to the beginning of the KP era, the very, very short KP era in New York, and KP, shell of his former self. 5 years ago, the Knicks under Derek Fisher, 22-22. Lost 9 out of their next 10. Derek Fisher was not the Knicks head coach after that little stretch. Next year, Jeff Hornacek, the most boring man on the face of the world, 16-17. Kurt Rambis might be the second most boring for that was Knicks coach, but 16-17 to start 2017 or 2016.
You're in the right time zone.
No, I'm in the right zone. I got it now. 2016 and then 15 wins in all of 2017 to another stellar, what ended up being 31-50 season. It's all roses now. Pun intended for Tibbs and the Knicks. But what will happen for Tibbs a month from now? Because when the bloom comes off of Tibbs and people start bad-mouthing him and people start realizing, oh my God, we're a young team and we're being coached by a disciplinarian, look out. It might be the same old story again.
Here's the only thing, Rabbi, I agree with you that that's something you got to keep an eye on. Here's the one thing I think that saves Tibbs from the same fate as the guys you mentioned. One, he's kind of dialed it back a little bit with this team. And two, unlike his previous stops, the big Rose, not the little one, I think is actually going to protect him and give him a chance to work through this and see where it goes. I don't think year one is expected to be a playoff year. I think if they
let me rephrase that. With the 10-team system, it should be a playoff year.
Right, it can. There's absolutely no reason why, with the East being what it is, that they can't scenario. But I don't think the expectation was there. So I think whatever happens this year, I don't think it's going to be that's going to be the determination of Tibbs' future. I think he gets more than just this because Leon Rose is his friend and wants him here.
I never said it wasn't going to be the end of his tenure, but I think if you end up like say with a 30-42 record at the end of the year, which means they're only winning 11 games from this point forward, that starts the process into next year. I'm saying he's had no chance of being fired this year. That would be completely stupid. But next year, if you go from 38-42 and then start the season 8-20, and then you have a little bit of a mutiny and go what I would call full-on Knicks, then we'll talk. But I'm just saying, Tibbs starts off well, but hopefully that start will get them at least to the play-in game this year and possibly get this team playoff experience that they are severely lacking.
Anthony, nice to see that Rabbi is still the eternal optimist.
He knows I'm an eternal pessimist when it comes with the Knicks.
That was sarcasm.
I mean, it's the Knicks. I mean, it's like dangerous optimism with this with us as a fan base.
Cautiously optimistic.
We want to be positive, but we're almost like enticed and like conditioned to wait for the ball to fall out at some point.
All right. Well, speaking of teams that have a little more heightened expectations, let's take our shopping bags, reusable shopping bags. We don't want to pay the 5 cents. Walk across to Herald Square because we still don't want to go outside due to the Penn Station construction. I was there on Monday, and don't take the LIRR right now until they fix that situation. But beside the point, let's board the B, not the 2. Let's take the B and head to Atlantic Avenue, stop and go to the Barclays Center. The second best record of the Eastern Conference and the 4th best in the NBA, tied with your world champion Los Angeles Lakers, belongs to the Brooklyn Nets. They are 24-13. They're a team that has only lost once since February 10th. As the kids say, they want the chip. Anyway, Anthony, Star Watch for me, please.
You know what? It's going to be Joe Harris. I mean, I talked about this during our NBA kickoff show, that he has the easiest job in the world. Just spot up and get ready to shoot when you have guys like Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving on your team. When you're throwing James Harden and his ability to pass, it just makes life so much easier for a guy who is literally a dead knockdown shooter from behind the arc. And looking at Rabbi, his expression.
Well, no, it's kind of funny just because of the fact when everybody was talking about when we went to the offseason, who is the Nets' biggest priority in re-signing, and everybody said, oh, it's the guy who can shoot 50% of his three-point lines, which is why Joe Harris was severely overpaid in free agency, but he's making it pay off.
Question, half points a game. 14.5 points a game on 52% shooting this season to go with 3 rebounds and 1 assist per game in 36 games. Even more impressively, and this is the stat line, he's averaging 3.4 three-pointers per game, which is 7th in the NBA. Even more impressive, he has been more accurate from the three-point line than 6 players ahead of him in three-pointers made this season, which is incredible. He's shooting 50% from the arc. The next closest player is Paul George. I think we've all had our fun with Paul George over the last couple of months. Playoff P, Pandemic P, you take a nickname for that one. But also more impressive is paired with his effective shooting, his three-point shooting. If the season was to end he would be on track to shoot 68% field goal percentage. That would actually put him ahead of Wilt Chamberlain all time for a single season record in field goal percentage. Wilt Chamberlain set the record at 68.3% in the 1966-67 season. And this is a player minimum of 10 field goal attempts per game. We know Joe Harris takes at least about 10 to 15 shots per game, most of them behind the arc. Like one of the biggest off-season moves the Nets made was retaining Joe Harris. A lot of people say that may have overpaid, he might overspend a little bit, but you gotta have when you have a shooter that accurate who can just spread the court, and you have 3 all-stars that teams have to concern themselves about. I mean, Joe Harris, it's so hard to play defense on everybody. Just by a process of elimination, Joe Harris is open. Like you ever watch the net game and he just literally hanging out in the corner, checking his, checking his text messages, maybe following his texts, or just simply waiting for somebody to
have a 7-course meal
for a wide open 3-pointer. I mean, look, we know the Nets can score. They are an offensive-driven team. They added Blake Griffin. That's another score off the bench that the Nets are going to have. But Joe Harris is definitely kind of he's not the straw that stirs a drink, a la Reggie Jackson, but he's a guy that pretty much gives defense another headache to deal with, because if he's spot on, if he's knocking down shots, he can go for 30 points a game as well. So now you got 4 to 5 guys on that team that can score 25 to 30 on a given night. I'm done. Yeah.
Yeah.
For a second, I was like, hey.
No, you can't, absolutely. So 2 stats I want to bring up before I get to your stat. They're not the same stat. Don't worry.
You better hope not.
Don't be Joe Harris.
Under here.
59% shooting percentage on wide open threes. 58.8% specifically. Yeah. That's insane. 5 points better per 100 possessions when Harris is on the floor. And he has been outstanding. He's been everything you would want to have. And again, the reason why he was signed to a very, very huge contract. I think Joe Harris, he's the specialist. He is the Duncan Robinson of this team. You can almost say to a certain extent he's the Klay Thompson of this team, just with a lot less considerable talent than Klay. But Joe Harris does exactly what he does well. He is I've called DJ LeMahieu a professional hitter. Joe Harris is a professional shooter. He lives outside of the 3-point line. He has a burrow, kind of, in there. It has a home. You can pay rent over there. Jay, give me another stat with the Nets as we head towards their last 35.
The stat is the number 7. And that is the number of games Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden have played together since Harden came to Brooklyn. 6 full games and part of a 7th. 186 minutes and 28 seconds. The trio is 6-1 in those games. A small sample size to be sure, but the big 3 are plus 8.8 points per 100 possessions, better than their opponents when they're on the floor together. For comparison, the 3-man unit that has played the most minutes together for the Nets this season is Harden, Irving, and the aforementioned Joe Harris. They've played a little over 100 minutes more than the big 3. It's about 286 minutes and change. And they are only plus 9.1 points per 100 possessions better than their opponents. The 5-man unit the big 3 has played the most minutes with includes Joe Harris and Jeff Green. Again, sample size is small, only 75 minutes. But that unit is plus 18 points per 100 possessions better than their opponents. Swap DeAndre Jordan in for Green, and that 5-man unit is plus 18.5 points per 100 possessions better than their opponents. So yet again, small sample size, only 50 minutes. The 5-man unit that has played the most minutes, period, for the Nets this season, 140, is Harden, Irving, Harris, Jordan, and Bruce Brown, who the rabbi talked up recently on our most recent show. That unit is only plus 10.1 points per 100 possessions better than their opponents. It makes me wonder and has net fans salivating at what this team is capable of once Durant returns to form. You guys know the numbers. The Nets were 7-6 before Harden came on board, 17-7 since, and they're on a 10-1 run into the All-Star break, as Rabbi mentioned. That 24-13 record has them a half game behind Philly for the top spot in the East. Harden and Irving have figured out how to play together. Once on the Harden's playing a huge reason for the Nets' offensive explosion since the trade, even without Durant. Harden is averaging 25.5 points per game, 8.4 rebounds, 11.4 assists, shooting 49.7 from the floor, 42.2 from three. Irving is averaging over 27 points per game on 51% shooting from the floor, 40% from three since Harden joined him in the backcourt. In the 507 minutes they've played together, they're plus 9 points per 100 possessions, better than their opponents. And now, as Anthony said, they've added Blake Griffin to what was already a prolific offense. That 119.1 efficiency rating is tops in the NBA. The versatility that Griffin gives them, his playmaking ability, especially in the pick and roll, along with the return of Durant, should scare the hell out of every other team in the East. If they can even play middle-of-the-pack defense, they're currently 26th in defensive efficiency at 114.2, then the chances of a parade outside of Anthony's window go up significantly. Keep an eye on these guys in the second half. It's going to be interesting to see what happens when Durant comes back and Griffin is integrated.
Well, a socially distant parade. I mean, I'm not expecting KD to toss the Larry O'Brien trophy off of the Atlantic pier and hope that somebody catches it off of another boat.
My imagery. Stop taking it literally.
I don't care. No. I was just saying, if there's going to be a parade, someone's dropping the Larry O'Brien trophy.
Ruining a perfectly good turn of phrase that I put in there for you.
No, to paraphrase, they would not be throwing the Larry O'Brien trophy outside Chick-fil-A here on Black.
I was hoping for a Shake Shack, but I have a few questions. Let's have a few questions about Steve Nash, and I'm also going to bring a little bit of Blake Griffin here, and I kind of want to respond. I want you two to respond to this. First of all, I want to see how they bring back KD. Me and Anthony have been talking for weeks when KD initially had the injury, and he said an Achilles is a hard thing to get over. 2 games became 4. 4 games out became 8. And now we don't know when we're going to see him back. We probably are not seeing him back on Thursday night when they start the second half against Boston. But this team is 10-1 without him. It's been 9-1 without him. So I think the question really remains, and I think we'll talk about this a little bit when we get to the Lakers in 2 seconds from now. What emphasis do you put on where the Nets finish in the East? They're probably locked into one of the top 3 seeds. They might get past Philadelphia. They may not. But who knows what fans are going to be in the crowd. They might get past Milwaukee. They might not. But again, who knows what fans are going to be in the crowd. And we all know how good Milwaukee has done with a high seed in the last 2 playoffs. It's going to be a very interesting challenge. I don't expect this big 3 to play with each other for at most 20 games until we get to the playoffs. I think the question is, how much do you want them to have the chemistry together? Because it seems like it's there when they're there. And how much do you want to make sure you have every single possible game where these 3 can play 30, 35, 40 minutes together? And again, you have the depth now. You've seen it over the last few weeks. What I'm very interested into seeing is what you're going to do with Blake Griffin. He really has not played at all for Detroit this year. You're going to play Blake at the 5. The question is, whose minutes do you take away at the 5? DeAndre Jordan, since this West Coast road trip, has actually played like a serviceable big man. He's going to give you 23 to 25 minutes a game. I think that's pretty obvious. I think he's comfortable in this role. We talked about Jeff Green. Anthony, you joked around with him, but Jeff Green has been a very capable scorer, especially since the West Coast road trip. He has played the 5 and has played the 5 well. Blake is going to take minutes either from one, both, or is going to take minutes from one, the other, or both. The most likely scenario is it's going to be both. He can't play the 4. He's going to have to play the big man in a rotation. They're going to need his size for something.
Right, but here's Rabbi. Here's why I disagree that he's going to actually necessarily take minutes from them. Because here's the thing. I can see him splitting a lot of the time at the 5 with DeAndre Jordan. But here's the thing. Just because he's at the 5 doesn't mean you can't play Jeff Green alongside him with the 4.
Green might be the choice, but
in bench centric units. And I don't think I don't think Steve Nash is going to shy away from that. Griffin gives you positional versatility, and you might as well make use of it. So the bigger question is not so much whether he's going to steal minutes from those two guys right now. The question is how are the minutes between the three of them going to break down once Durant comes back and he's ramped up and he gets to the point where he's playing his usual 32, 35 minutes a game. How are you breaking down those minutes from that point on? How are you breaking it down between Durant and Green, DeAndre and Blake?
But here's why I like the move to begin with, though, because
in
this year of first of all, it's a low risk move.
Right,
I mean,
no risk at all.
You're basically getting you're getting a veteran, and you're basically saying, how do I put this team? And you're going to have more COVID-related stuff, and you're going to have more injuries. It's a 72-game sprint. But the question is, I think, if Blake just starts being a guy who doesn't really get you production, do you even give him 15 to 20 minutes a game, or do you let him run on the bench a little bit? That's really the question, because this team has been so together. Who knows? All right.
Well, the way I look at it is this, Rabbi, is that you brought a guy like Blake Griffin. The reason he wasn't playing a lot this year for Detroit is because Detroit is in full-on rebuild mode.
And they had no need for him.
Right. He wasn't a part of their future. So they did not feel any compulsion to give him minutes. This is a guy who we know, even if he no longer has his jumping over Kia automobile hops, he can still, we know how good his basketball IQ is. We know how good a passer and a facilitator he is. You can put him at the elbow. You can put him in the block, and he can make the guys around him better. He's a guy who recognizes that he's no longer the man, and he doesn't expect to be fully embrace the role player role, fitting in and doing whatever he can to help a team get better. And that, along with a guy like Jeff Green, those are the type of guys you need, who are glue type guys who can do a lot of different things, who have some versatility, who give you a lot of lineup options that a team that has championship aspirations needs to have. Because I'll tell you this, there are going to be nights based on the matchup where DeAndre Jordan is flat out unplayable based on who the other team is.
We'll see how that happens. That's going to be interesting to see. Because DeAndre hasn't really played, at least over these last 15 games, in a situation where you have to sit him down.
And Blake gives you an option when you have to sit him down.
Yep. All right, let's move on. We're going to go to the East now, my friends, and let's talk a up mess. There are 5.5 games separating 4th Boston from 14th Orlando in the Eastern Conference. But there are 3 legitimate title contenders in this conference, and unfortunately the Nets are one of them. So out of the graciousness of my heart, these 2 are going to talk about the other 2, and then I am going to pick a name out of the hat and then figure out right from there what we're actually talking about. Yay me. Let's review the big 2.5 teams in contention, starting with the Sixers, even though I've probably seen more of them in 2021 than you have, Jay. But let's talk about the team that's currently the beast of the East.
Only because in your capacity, you have more access.
I do.
To them on, through the various platforms.
And they haven't played national TV games a lot this year because of how bad they struggled last year.
How much of a criminality is that? That the rest of the country is not getting to see what is going on in Philly because of late it's been really good.
That's okay. They can just see a New Orleans Pelicans game every other night. But Philadelphia Sixers games? Nope.
Yeah. Talk about the Sixers, Rabbi. 24-12, first in the East. The second half, guys, is all about the key players on this team being healthy and available every game. It starts with the big 3 in the starting lineup. Joel Embiid, who's having a monster MVP type of season, second in the NBA in scoring at 32 points a game with over 11 boards. He gets to the line like nobody's business, and he's actually improved his three-point shooting. Ben Simmons, who has become a lot more aggressive on offensive late, and Tobias Harris, who has been a consistent number 3, thanks to Doc Rivers, who has put him in position to succeed just like he did when he had him with the Clippers. Then it's about the key secondary players. Seth Curry, who's relied upon to be the knockdown three-point shooter that opens the floor for Embiid and Simmons, and Shake Milton, who's relied upon to be the big scorer off the bench, because when he's channeling his inner Lou Williams, Doc can run an all-bench unit and not worry that they'll blow a lead that the starters have built up. But Embiid and Simmons missed the All-Star game due to their barber testing positive for COVID. The Sixers All-Stars are in the protocol and are hoping to be available when the second half starts for Philly in Chicago Thursday night. The biggest accomplishment of the first half of the season for Doc Rivers has been unlocking Simmons' aggressiveness on offense, not only when Embiid is off the floor, but also when he's sharing the court with Simmons. Since January 31st, a 13-game span heading into the break, Simmons has been averaging 20.5 points per game, 7.3 rebounds, 7.2 assists on almost 64% field goal shooting, and he's actually hit 1 3 in that span. He's also getting to the line almost 6 times per game and shooting almost 70% from the stripe, so he's no longer, a liability there. The showcase game for this was back on February 15th on the road in Utah. In 38 minutes, Simmons went 15 of 26 from the floor, 12 of 13 from the stripe, 42 points, 9 boards, 12 assists in a tough road game against a Jazz team that was 23-5 at that point. Sixers lost that game, but Simmons' performance is what the team needed on a night when Embiid was unavailable. Sixers got their revenge on Utah a couple of weeks later when the Utah came to Philly, and then you had Embiid at his best, opened up a can of whoop-ass all over Rudy Gobert to the tune of 40 points on 14 of 27 from the floor, 2 of 5 from 3, and 10 of 13 from the line to go with 19 rebounds, Philly winning that game. Both of these guys are playing at a high level on the other side of the floor as well, with Simmons continuing to show why he should be Defensive Player of the Year if he plays the entire season. What was gotten lost in all the talk about these two guys is that Tobias Harris has been quietly having a really good year. 20-plus points per game, 7.6 boards, 3.4 assists, 51% shooting from the floor, little over 40% from 3, and 88, almost 89% from the line. There's a point during the first half of the season where he was a member of the elite 50-40-90 club before his free throw shooting. 18 games of more, only 3 games of less than 15 show just how consistent a performer he's been. A lot of that is his skill set, which we've seen plenty of in his time in Philly, but a lot of this is his reunion with Doc Rivers, who knows how to put Harris in positions to be successful. They were together for 87 games over parts of 2 seasons with the Clippers. Harris averaged 20 points a game on almost 49% field goal shooting, almost 43% from downtown, and 86% from the line. There were plenty of us who felt Harris was deserving of a spot in the All-Star game, but I have a feeling he's going to use that snub as incentive to put up a really great second half. Here's what it comes down to, though. The wild card, the X factor, the thing that could take the Sixers to the promised land or knock them out in the second round again is their bench, specifically Shake Milton, and their secondary players, specifically Seth Curry, 2 guys I alluded to earlier. Curry's been inconsistent since coming off the COVID list, which cost him 7 games. In the first 8 games of the season, Curry was, as expected, 17 points a game, shooting almost 60% from 3. In the 20 games since his return, a little under 11 points a game and barely over 37% from 3. Look, I don't expect him to get back to those pre-COVID levels, but at the minimum, the Sixers need Curry to put up his Dallas numbers, which was about 12.6 points per game, 44% from 3, fulfilling the J.J. Redick role that Philly brought him here for. As for Shake, well, he's been ridiculously inconsistent. 7 games of 18 points or better, 11 games of 10 points or less. When he plays in an all-bench lineup with Dwight Howard, Furkan Korkmaz, Tyrese Maxey, and Matisse Thybulle, where he's the primary offensive option, he is a whopping minus 21.3 points per 100 possessions, worse than his opponents. This is why Doc has become hesitant to play an all-bench lineup of late. However, when Doc has Harris lead the bench unit, replacing Maxey with that 5, and Shake's the number 2 option, he's plus 11.9 points per 100 possessions better than the opponents. Expect that to continue, especially with the way Simmons and Embiid have been playing together. Look, I think the second half is going to continue to be an all-out war with the Nets and the Bucks for the top seed in the East. If Embiid continues to play at an MVP level, and if Simmons maintains his level of aggressiveness on offense, and both key a top-flight defense, the Sixers are number 5 right now, the Sixers are going to get at least one of the top 3 seeds in the East. If Curry and Milton can find consistency with the offense and Harrison continues to do what he's doing, they can actually win the East and be a threat to take home the Larry O'Brien Trophy.
And if they play 60 games, if Embiid played 60 games, wow. I mean, considering conditioning was always a problem for him, effort was always a problem for him, and now we're in a position where they're this good.
Neither is a problem for him this year.
No, not even good. It's amazing how this turnaround has happened for the Sixers, but let's see if it can continue. I think a top 3 seed is pretty much in pretty good standing. Jinx. But hopefully this will be a much better season for the Sixers as it has been in the past, especially in the Brett Brown era. All right, enough of me talking. Let's talk about the Milwaukee Bucks, Anthony.
You know what? Since we talk about the offense, after what we saw from the NFC East this past football season, all we should be complaining about any conference of any sport being a mess. But the Milwaukee Bucks have to be above the mess right now. The biggest win they got was before the season and getting Giannis Antetokounmpo to sign that contract extension. Can you imagine where the Bucks would be right now if he had declined that extension, and how pins and needles this organization would be? But you know what? He's awarded with another MVP caliber season. He's averaging 29 points a game with 11 rebounds and 5 assists a game. Then you look at the rest of the team. Chris Middleton, a snub for All-Star, having another consistent, solid season. Drew Holiday was the big addition this season. He missed 10 games due to COVID and admitted that the virus really affected him. He's trying to play his way back into conditioning. And you think about it, the Bucks are 17-9 with Holiday in the lineup. So him getting back into basketball shape and being able to kind of, fit into the offensive plans is going to be key for Milwaukee going into the second half of the season. Where the drop-off to Milwaukee is actually on the defensive end. They're switching a lot more this season than years past, and it actually taking a step back. The 12th defensively after the last 2 years being in the top 5 in both offensive and defensive efficiency. The offense is still good. Defensively, they're taking a few steps back. Also, rebounding offensively, they were in the top 5 last year. The last 2 years, they're only 11th in offensive rebounding. So, obviously, the switching is actually affecting them on the rebounding end, too. When you're switching and getting mismatches, they kind of affect you on the boards. What this team is, and the question for this team is, can they get over the hump? I mean, we've seen the last 2 seasons. They finished with the best record in the Eastern Conference, even the NBA last season, and failed to make it to the finals. 2 years ago, they lost in the conference finals. After taking a 2-0 lead, last year they bowed out in 5 games to, in the bubble to a Miami Heat team that just caught fire when everyone least suspected. And I really feel like for Mike Budenholzer, was done a tremendous job as a head coach, but we've kind of seen this before with teams with good coaches just not able to get over the hump and having to go to someone else after the season. And I feel like for Budenholzer to come back for a 4th year, Milwaukee's got to at least get to the finals. I think that is the benchmark right now. They failed to get there the last 2 years despite very successful regular seasons. And I just think back to the Detroit Pistons of a decade ago with Rick Carlisle. They got to the conference finals. They were close. Didn't quite get over the hump. And then before you know it, he was let go, and they brought in Larry Brown. We've seen this in football with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, with Tony Dungy and John Gruden. I just wonder if this Milwaukee Bucks team has hit the ceiling because, like I said, the most important thing they were able to do was lock up Antetokounmpo for a long-term extension. The thing is, if they don't make it to at least the NBA Finals this year, now what? Because you're giving him the pieces, you put players around him, and now it's just a matter of can they finally take that next step and like I said, at least reach the finals. I mean, a championship is one thing, but to at least get to the finals is another story.
So, interestingly enough, you mentioned that Detroit run in that hiring of Larry Brown. Yeah, all it took was the firing of Rick Carlisle, the hiring of Larry Brown, and Ron Artest basically going into the crowd and getting himself suspended for the entire season to do that. So I think maybe the coaching thing, maybe Coach Bud is still a long-term lock for this team, especially because Giannis likes him a lot. So I don't know if that's going to be the solution, and I'm always really the first person to say, fire the coach, fire the coach, fire the coach. I
yes,
think
you are.
Just needs to, it has a lot of fundamental things that need to be resolved, and I think this season is the first one that they're really thinking of. You know, maybe the regular season isn't all that important, and so I think even if they're number 2 or number 3, they don't care. All they care about is what their results are come May and beyond. All right, so I decided to flip a coin. I was thinking either the Boston Celtics or the Miami Heat. Coin landed tails, so I'm going to go with the Celtics. I don't know what to expect from the Celtics in the second half of this season. As of today, they've won 4 straight right before the break to get back to 2 games over 500 and 4th in the East. But if you do the math, before you are 2 games over 500 and you lose and you win 4, you were 2 games under 500. And for a team that last year was in the conference finals as the higher seed, I don't think that's really acceptable. Now, of course, the Celtics have Jason Tatum, 24.9 points per game this year, and the emergence of Jaylen Brown, who's become one of the 5 best stars in the Eastern Conference, 24.7 points per game this year. You think this team is on the up and up. They should be better than they were last year. Yeah, no. You have games where they've lost to the Hawks. They've lost twice to a Hawks team that was about to fire their coach and eventually did. They blew huge leads against the Pelicans, gave Luka basically Doncic a stake in the team after he owned them with multiple clutch shots. However, the success of this Celtics team from being pretty much a lackluster 500 team, which they are right now, to a team that could get themselves back in the hunt to the East, all starts with one name, Kemba. Can you believe it's been 10 years, by the way, since his Big East tournament heroics? 10 years! I'm old. All right.
Yeah, that coincides with UConn being back in the Big East.
It does coincide with UConn being back in the Big East. And as you see, they're a tournament team now, as they are back in the Big East. It's been a 4-game winning streak for the Celtics team, as I mentioned. Kemba's averaged 24, 4, and 5, shoots over 40% from 3. He gets to the free throw line about 4 to 5 times a game. Those are 2 things that have not happened this season with him most of the time. He will not get into the line at all, and for a shooter like him, you should get to the line every now and then. He only draws fouls on 8% of his shots. 8. Kemba was also at 37% from the field going into that streak, and that was the second worst number in his entire career. You wanted Kemba Walker to be clutch. He hasn't even been as clutch as the guy who he basically swapped spots with a few years ago, and that's Terry Rozier, the man who's been just making 3-point shots like crazy inside the final 10 seconds of games. Ask Golden State. For Kemba to make himself bring the Celtics back up to where they should be, he needs to be the man who was an all-star in the first half of 2019-2020, and needs to get over all the 1,000 injuries that Kemba seemingly has had in his career. And if he does that, the Celtics will actually qualify for this list in the correct connotation when we talk again about the NBA going into the playoffs. All right, guys, let's move on to the West. It has more of a pecking order. There's actually a 3-game difference between number 10, Memphis, and number 11, New Orleans. Not a 5.5-game difference between 4 and 14. And yes, the NFC East does not own the title of most screwed up division. That doesn't happen, especially with Dak now having his contract extension. All right, so let's talk 3 title contenders in this segment. But because I have a headache, I don't want to have any more Clippers arguments. So we're not going to talk about LA's second sister. Sorry. No good. Anthony, take me to Mormon country and the Jazz.
Wow, the Utah Jazz with the 27-9 best record in the NBA. By far, they've been the most complete team, the most red-hot team going into the All-Star break. Look, they have 3 All-Stars. I mean, how great is it was to see Mike Conley finally be rewarded after how many years? Like, I think 13, 14 years into the league.
And he was going to take that as a badge of courage, by the way, as the guy. Best player to never would make an all-star team. Come on, now you've lost that honor.
Yeah, it was great to see.
I'm sure he's disappointed.
I think he is.
Yeah. It was great to see Mike Conley winning that honor. But think about this. We obviously mentioned a year ago, Rudy Gobert was patient zero as far as COVID in the NBA. I know we'll talk about that a little bit about that later on. But this year, he's ranked second in rebounding at 13 a game, second in blocks. And it was tied for number 2 in the league in double-doubles with 24 heading into the All-Star break. On top of the fact that he has a contract that Shaquille O'Neal is pretty envious of at the moment. But you think about this, Donovan Mitchell is playing lights out, a man on a mission. You keep in mind how well he played in the postseason. This is a Jazz team we forgot because the Clippers' 3-1 series lead and losing the series was so, was the big headliner that the Jazz actually lost a 3-1 series lead to the same Nugget team the previous round. So, but this Jazz team seems like it's definitely on a mission. They're the third highest offensive rated team in the league, 117 rating, third best 3-point percentage. 7 of the 9 players in their rotation were shooting 37% or better from behind the arc. You think about the three All-Stars they have. They have a guy named Jordan Clarkson, remember him, off the bench.
Biggest surprise in the NBA this season, by the way, Jordan Clarkson.
Behind the line.
Sixth man of the year. Sixth man of the year.
Yeah, without question. The question the question going into the second half of the year is, can they keep this pace up as far as 3-point shooting? They were kind of hitting them down at a record pace, but against Orlando a couple weeks ago, you kind of see, like on the second half of the back-to-back, they were kind of starting to see the fatigue, the wear and tear, and the legs not there, and they kind of, and you're starting to see it, like in this condensed season, that these back-to-backs and he's playing every other night is going to catch up to this team at some point, and they're a great defensive team. The second question I have is, remember, they handed the Lakers the worst loss of the season. They beat them by 28 points on national television. However, the Lakers were missing 2 very key starters, and and also we found out Marcus Gasol was banged up. So that was that, and Kyle Kuzma and eventually missed a couple of games also. Because I still feel like a healthy Lakers team is the best team in the Western Conference. Can this Utah Jazz team beat a healthy team, Lakers team, 4 out of 7? And it's kind of hard to go against LeBron James at this point. I don't know how many times we have to bet against LeBron, but he keeps time and time again showing us that you probably don't want to bet against him in the postseason. And we know LeBron, you don't want to go against him in a Game 7, that's for sure. But the Utah Jazz right now, they've been playing lights out in the Western Conference. They have the second easiest schedule in the second half of the year. The easiest is the Nets. So it is the road to the number 1 seed is literally set out for both teams. Going into the second half of the year, they play 35, 36 games remaining. They are the Utah Jazz. They put themselves in a prime position to be the 1 seed, to have all the other to really. It's gonna be interesting to see what team they play because in the 7-10 player scenario this season. But I think Utah, I think they put themselves in a position where they could get to the conference finals without question, because they're a team that they have the balanced scoring, they have the All-Star and Donovan Mitchell, a guy that has shown that he can step up in the spotlight, and they play defense. I mean, and I say this time and time again, when the playoffs come, defense is going to win you championships. I think that's why I still have my doubts about Brooklyn, even though they're so offensive heavy. But Utah, I can see them get to at least the conference finals. And that's why I say it's going to be a question of can they beat the Lakers. I think they're a team, but a healthy Laker team is going to be standing their way and getting back to the NBA Finals for the first time since 1998. The conference finals for the first time since 2007. I mean, it's a long – Jazz fans have been waiting a long time for a team that can really get behind. Not since the Malone, Stockton, Jeff Hornacek era, since they had a team this good, this complete, this late in the season.
By the way, you've won. If you thought we would mention Jeff Hornacek twice in this show, you've now officially gotten your second Jeff Hornacek mention. The one thing I'm kind of curious about the Jazz, and this is no disrespect to Donovan Mitchell, I kind of saw it in the Sixers games. Honestly, both of them, even though they've won the other one. And I've seen it in a bunch of games that they played this season. Final 5 minutes, Donovan Mitchell or Joel Embiid, who do you trust more?
Joel Embiid.
Final 5 minutes, Donovan Mitchell or Devin Booker, who do you trust more? That's closer, but...
It's closer, but I go with Mitchell only because of the experience.
Final 5 minutes, Donovan Mitchell or Kawhi Leonard, who do you trust more? You trust Stop it. You trust the guy who has basically carried a team to an NBA Finals. No. Sorry, you trust the team.
You know what?
Let's not get our Kawhi discussion.
The only, Rabbi, my hesitation is only because I am hesitant about the Clippers as a team.
Not that's fine. I'm just going. This is just the question of the Jazz might need. Mitchell might need to take even another step, even more than the step that he took in that series against Jamal Murray last year. Maybe. All right. So you got to be the champs, you got to beat the champs. But does the champs actually just want to be just on their way to the postseason?
It's funny. Anthony talks about, not sleeping on LeBron in June. It's kind of funny how that's become similar to how we say don't sleep on Tom Izzo in March. And yes, that is a little bit of a teaser right there. The Lakers, 24-13, fourth in the West. And look, we all know that this team is not about the regular season. While the effort to win every game, every time they step on the floor is going to be there because LeBron won't allow anything else otherwise. Best record in the East is not the primary goal. They know they need to win enough to be a top 4 seed heading into the playoffs. This is all about holding the fort while Anthony Davis recovers and rehabs his Achilles tendon injury. They're 2 games behind Phoenix for the 2 seed, half a game ahead of their down-the-hall neighbors for the 3 seed. Despite AD being on the shelf, the defensive mindset that head coach Frank Vogel and LeBron had last season has carried over as the Lakers are number 1 in the NBA in defensive efficiency and second in points per game. Allowed them to stay quarter of the always competitive Western Conference, despite being 18th in offensive efficiency and 21st in points per game. Though that offense actually does get much better in clutch time, where they have the 3rd best offense and 5th best net rating. They went into the All-Star break on a 3-7 stretch after winning 7 straight. And, that 3-7 stretch is largely due to them missing Dennis Schroeder and Marc Gasol for parts of those 10 games, putting them down 3 starters. The Lakers have struggled on offense without Davis, which is to be expected. You're not easily going to make up a guy who puts in 22.5 points a night. But the loss of Schroeder for 4 games from February 18th through the 24th took away a scorer, a ball handler, and a facilitator, putting even more of an onus on James to do everything, which he pretty much does anyway, as his team leading almost 26 points, almost 8 assists would indicate. His 8 rebounds per game is technically second to Davis, but with AD out, he's also the Lakers' number 1 rebounder. Lakers lost all 4 of those games Schroeder was out. He was back for the last 4 games heading into the break and averaged 19.8 a game with a shade under 6 assists as the Lakers went 2-2. They need this kid to be at the top of his game to help LeBron hold the fort until AD returns. The Lakers also need Montrezl Harrell to get better on the defensive side of the ball because right now, with Davis out, the Lakers cannot use AD to hide Harrell's deficiencies on that side of the ball. This puts Bo Vogel in a bit of a tough spot because the Lakers need Harrell's offensive skill set. He's averaging 13.8 a game on almost 63% shooting, a little over 6 boards a game. But when the reigning 6th man of the year is a liability on defense, which he currently is, the lineup he's played the most minutes with this year is alongside James, Kyle Kuzma, Wesley Matthews, and Markieff Morris, and he's minus 12.5 points per 100 possessions, worse than the opponents. You can see why his minutes have dropped to around 20 per game, even with AD out. That is a problem. I will be interested to see if the Lakers get involved in the buyout market to try and get a more athletic center to play behind Gasol, and or get a 3-and-D forward to have as another option to Harrell, especially for small ball lineups where Morris is essentially playing the 5. AD's absence has exposed some holes in the Lakers roster. But as noted, it's hard to replace one of the NBA's best players. I fully expect the Lakers to hold the fort until AD's return and then make a bit of a late season push to ensure they have at least the number 4 seed, if not a higher one.
Go ahead, Anthony. I figured you wanted to say something here.
Yeah, I think the Lakers are a lock to be either 2 or 3. I don't think it really matters whether you're the Lakers.
I don't think they care.
Exactly.
This team is made for the playoffs. I think if they're a 2 or 3, they'll get into the conference finals. If they're a 4, then they may run into Utah, which is
do you honestly think the Lakers care if they have to play a Game 7 on the road? If any team doesn't have that type of concern, it's the Lakers.
Yeah, LeBron James won in Game 7 just 3 years ago with a lesser Cavs team in Boston when the Celtics should have won that game without question. So, like I said, I don't think I want to bet against LeBron James by no means. However, the Lakers have been banged up. I think it's for them. It's just about getting healthy and getting Anthony Davis back. They need another big because obviously Anthony Davis not being able to play the center because he's not healthy is showing, and Marcus Gasol cannot move. And like I said, we'll see what happens with the buyout as far as the free agency and the buyout. Drum is an option. Whiteside is another option
coming back.
Yeah, you never know. So he's saying no, but
he's saying no because But look, McGee would have to take a circuitous route. He'd actually have to get traded and then get bought out in order for the Lakers to get back. The only reason I throw that out there is because he's familiar with the scheme and he's somebody who can easily integrate. That's all I'm saying from that standpoint.
I'm kind of more curious about one thing. Are we sure AD are we 100% sure AD is going to be AD? Are we 100% sure AD's injuries aren't going to catch up with him? Last year was kind of an outlier for him because his first playoffs, he had a ton of time to rest. And even though he was playing a condensed schedule in the bubble, he was in one place. So,
here, Rabbi, granted, it's a legitimate concern considering
big time.
But I look at it this way: the Lakers are being ridiculously cautious with him, and honestly, they understand that they don't need to rush him back. He's not the guy who has to carry the team like he was in New Orleans. So I think the Lakers have a good plan. AD is going along. He's all in on it. Everybody understands that if the current cast minus AD stays healthy, they will probably stay exactly where they are until he gets back. And if he's back and healthy, and even if he's back just for the last 10 games of the regular season to kind of get him reps and get him back into form, what they care about is having AD healthy for the playoffs. This is the Lakers. The goal is the title.
Oh, no.
The season is what matters.
I understand that, but I think the real question is, even if you keep AD on ice until the final 15 games, is he kind of more of a wounded warrior right now that the moment he plays again? And again, we don't know this until it happens, but
that's with any injury.
As with any injury, but I think
the good thing is that the injury is not as severe as originally thought. Is that, but he works his way back, he works the program, and he's back in time just to get, shake the rust off in time for the playoffs. And honestly, we don't know. You don't know what it's going to be
but
like.
That's kind of what I'm curious about. By the way, fun question for you guys. LeBron James has made the NBA Finals 10 times, and will probably make it 11 this year. How many times has he been the number 1 seed going into the playoffs?
What's the playoffs?
Going into the playoffs, how many times has his team been the 1 seed out of 10 times?
Why do I want to say last year was the first?
It wasn't the first, and no, last year was one of the times that it happened. It's been more than once, but it hasn't been too many.
I would say maybe
one other time?
4 of those times. I'm thinking about his time with Cleveland and Miami.
All right,
I would say about maybe 4.
I don't think he was ever the 1 seed with Cleveland, but
he was okay. I'll answer this 3 times.
I mean, in the playoffs.
Okay.
Last year, the second year the year that they won the title in 16, because everybody was just terrible in the East. The 2 seed was Toronto, for God's sakes. And trying to remember which year in Miami. It was
so once in each stop along his career. That's
once in each stop along his career. I'm trying to remember which year in Miami. It was
I think it was 2013, actually, because the Knicks were the 2 seed that year.
Yeah,
and
it was 13.
Lost to Indiana round 2. So yeah,
it was 13, and in 14 they were it was kind of funny. Although they did host a Game 7 against Boston in the Eastern Conference Finals in 2012, but Chicago was actually the 1 seed that year, and that was when D. Rose got injured in Game 1, and your Sixers benefited and made themselves almost get to the Eastern Conference Finals in 2012. So LeBron doesn't care about the 1 seed.
No, I was actually in Philadelphia for that Game 6 against Boston. I didn't go to the game, but I was across the street from the arena watching it from a local bar. It was a fun time that weekend.
Yeah. All right. Oh my God, I forgot. I have to talk about the Suns. The Suns have the 3rd best record in the NBA this year. And while a boring analyst like myself can mention the simple, they went 8-0 in the bubble this year, I think let's get rid of that. This team is going to make the playoffs for the first time in 11 years, and they want more. They have exceeded expectations like crazy. This team, Chris Paul is actually has his assists gone up to almost 9 a game this year. Slight decline in points and rebounds, but you expect that with a better team around him than he had last year at Oklahoma City. Devin Booker was finally an all-star and has been really good in his last 10. But this team needs to be at championship level. They're good. They're top 4 ready, and they are right now one of the hottest teams. They've won 16 out of their last 18 games. But how do they get one step further? How about a former number 1 pick of DeAndre Ayton? He needs to be on the level of those 2 guys. He's a double-double guy, sure. He's actually down in rebounds this year, 11.4 a game. Last year at 11.5. His points per game, though, was ridiculously down. 14.5. That was 18.2 a season ago. This Suns team is full of talent right now. They have role players like Jay Crowder on their team. But we know that Chris Paul, you got him in free agency. You may have overpaid for him, but he has made this team so much better and realized that talent that you've seen from the bubble. But now Ayton has to get on that level where he can be a big who's challenging a Dwight Howard from time to time in point production. Maybe impossible, but you know what? If you do that, you have a team that can actually win a title and get to the first NBA Finals since 1993. Ayton is on that same time level. We know what the Lakers could do in this postseason. We've seen it. I don't know what the Suns could do. The bubble games were all playoff-like, but let's face it, they weren't playoff games. This year is the year that the Suns could take off. Ayton needs to improve. Booker needs to stay the course. There's a bunch of good West teams who could even beat them in round 1 and make their playoff stay very short. Or again, this team could be the team who is facing the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals going toe-to-toe just like the Nuggets did last year. I love the Phoenix Suns. I love Monty Williams. Monty Williams is maybe doing a better coaching job this year than he did last year in the bubble with this team.
Yep.
Now we just need to see that final level to make the Suns a real championship contender.
Yeah, before we move on, I'd like to apologize to Clipper fans out there.
Please don't.
We've been there, done that with this team. If you don't like it, there is someone you can blame. I think Paul George will blame everyone this side of the East River at this point. But there is one more person he can blame.
Agatha,
you know who?
Always.
Agatha, I had to throw it in there. I'm wearing a shirt.
Well played.
Agatha was the cause of the 3-1 collapse, so blame it really was Agatha all along. All right, let's end tonight's show. Jay, Anthony, the madness is back, baby. Yes. Let's talk about one of the topics that we all wanted to talk about when we produced this show a year ago in the city, back in this thing that we called a studio, in this borough that we called Manhattan. It's amazing. This wasn't like this. We weren't always in boxes, and I wasn't always hosting. Anyway, teams who can move up from their current projected seed, anywhere from 3 to 6, with a good performance this conference title week. Teams that we really could see being in Indianapolis for the Final Four and the first round, and the second round, and the third round, the Sweet 16, and the play-in. It's all in Indianapolis. Anyway, Jay.
I was wondering where you were going with that.
Oh, I got a worse one coming up next. Jay, let's start with you. Give me your team.
The team I'm looking at is the Kansas Jayhawks. It's a little bit of a hat tip to Stephen D. Ferguson, who usually winds up talking about the Jayhawks during this type of show. Kansas is 19-8, currently on the 4 line, according to ESPN's Joe Lunardi. Can they move up 1 line? Can they move up 2 lines? I think they have a shot if they can at least get to the Big 12 title game. They're the 2 seed. Baylor is obviously the 1. But it's not going to be an easy road for the Jayhawks as they first face the winner of Oklahoma-Iowa State. Sooners are likely to come out of that one. The teams split their matchup with each team winning at home. Jayhawks swept Iowa State, winning by 33 at home and 14 on the road. If they get past the Sooners, then they get the winner of the 3-6 matchup, which is Texas versus Texas Tech. Here's where the Jayhawks road gets bumpier. Texas swept Kansas, smoking them 84-59 at Allen Fieldhouse and narrowly escaping them by 3 points in overtime in Austin, 75-72. Beating the Longhorns to get to the Big 12 title game improves the Jayhawks' resume. Now, if they not only meet Baylor in the title game, but Xerox that 71-53 win where David McCormick put up 20 points on 8 of 10 field goal from the floor in 25 minutes before fouling out, where Jalen Wilson owned the glass, pulling down 14 boards, and Marcus Garrett added 14 and 7, and the Jayhawks shot 51% from the floor, went to the line 26 times and made 18, which were more than the Bears took the entire game. And Kansas's defense held Baylor to 35% from the floor and 23% beyond the arc. They do that again, they will beat Baylor for the Big 12 championship. That version of the Kansas Jayhawks is the one we are used to seeing. They're coming on late in the season and heading into the conference tournament on a good run. That has them removing themselves from the, quote, blue bloods aren't blue this year narrative that the rabbi has been harping on all season. He's getting a little bit of satanic pleasure out of it, I got to say. That narrative has permeated Bath College hoops all year. Yeah, granted, they had to rally from a 15-point deficit to beat UTEP in their season finale, but that was a game that was added to the schedule late just so they wouldn't have a long stretch, between the road up to the conference tournament. But the end result is they did win the game. They got 19 from Ochai Agbaji, and McCormick added 16 of his 18 in the second half to key what had called a really good for not being very good for the first 30. Kansas can't afford to miss 12 of their first 14 shots and have a 6.5-minute span where they don't have a field goal against any of their potential opponents in the conference tournament. They're the number 2 seed by virtue of going 12-6 in the conference. Texas, West Virginia, and Oklahoma State each won 11 games. The Longhorns and the Mountaineers only played 17 Big 12 games, while the Cowboys had 8 losses. Kansas has won 7 of their last 8 after losing 91-79 in West Virginia. Their only loss, that 3-pointer to Texas in that on OT on the road. This is a Jayhawk team that can make some noise in the big dance, and I don't see them dropping below the 4 seed line. But if they win the Big 12 tournament, especially if they beat Baylor to do it, it's going to improve that top 15 net ranking and their 9-8 record in quad 1, quad 2 games. And I do think that might be enough to get them at least to a 3, possibly as high as a 2.
Unfortunately, we all have working jobs. So unfortunately for Kansas, because of COVID-19 protocols, McCormick is out for the entire Big 12 tournament.
Oh, I did
as of today. 13.4 points, 6.1 rebounds a game. He'll be back next week. His reserve Tristan and Naruna is also going to be in protocol because they're roommates, so you have to together. It's a significant blow. You're not going to have McCormick's size, and you pretty much lose your interior presence to begin with.
On both sides of the ball.
Yeah, you have Mitch Lightfoot in there as a 6'8" senior, and you have Jalen Wilson in there as a small ball 5. But when you're playing a team, especially like Baylor, who has pretty much all interior presence, that's going to be a very tough battle. But I think the way Kansas is playing, and honestly the way the rest of the Big 12 is sputtering, especially West Virginia as of late, I still think Kansas has a very good shot to get to Baylor. Anything else? We'll see. Anthony, I mentioned West Virginia. We might as well talk about them right now.
Yeah, you mentioned the Big 12 kind of has a conference kind of stumbling a little bit, and West Virginia is kind of a personification of that. Look, they're 18-8, 11-6 in the conference, and a great and solid resume. You know, you look at the quadrant 1 wins is 6. They haven't had any bad losses. However, they came into the final week of the season with a chance to really kind of help themselves out as in an effort to get a 1 seed, and they end up losing 2 out of 3, and now they get Oklahoma State in the Big 12 tournament Thursday morning. Well, here's the thing. I think West Virginia at this point, they are currently a 3 according to Joe Dolly's bracketology. I think they can move up a solid outing in the Big 12 tournament, maybe winning a couple of games to get to the championship game will help, well, at least give them the argument. But right now, I think West Virginia, because of the late season stumble, are really playing to protect falling down a bracket. And we talk about at-large bids and playing to get in. And just as much as anything, this tournament is playing for great seeding and being able to avoid maybe a tougher first or second-round opponent in the tournament. I think West Virginia right now, if they can at least maintain a 3 seed, they can move up. I feel they can move up to a 2 if they win the Big 12 championship outright. But they can try to at least get a couple of games in and show themselves on a 3 spot, and not fall down to maybe a 4 out of 5 or even a 6 seed where they may end up having a tougher first-round opponent. So I think West Virginia is right now, it's just in a position to kind of play to hold on to a high seed right now going into the tournament.
Yeah, and Rabbi, you can honestly put Kansas in the same boat, with this news that McCormick is out. You're going to be playing to not lose where you currently are, though we both know that the committee does take injuries to top players on a squad into consideration in terms of whether or not they knock them down on the seeding line. If the team performs worse than expected in the conference tournament. So I think a lot of it, and I still think the Big 12 is going to get the most bids out of any conference, deservedly so for the way
Big Ten's probably going to have a little something to say about that.
Say about it, granted, but right now it looks like you've got as of right now coming into championship week. The Big 12 has the most teams. It's going to be interesting to see if they can keep that based on how well they do or do not beat each other up. And again, as you said, how well what happens in the Big Ten tournament between the teams that are not necessarily all the way at the top, but the teams that are in the middle of the pack of that conference, how they do in their conference tournament.
Well, the Big Ten is probably going to – the reason why I say the Big Ten, it's probably going to be a 9-bid league, although we'll talk about Michigan State in just a moment. But I was originally going to pick Oklahoma State, but you all went on the Big 12 bandwagon. Thanks, guys. Because I wanted to talk about Cade Cunningham, although God knows if he'll actually be in that game.
Hey, who knows if Oklahoma State will actually get to play.
It looks like they're going to hold off on that, and I think that, like I said,
surprise.
I'm not shocked either, but if you've seen Cade Cunningham play, you're going to want to see him in the tournament. He is must-see television.
Because it's the only tournament you're going to get to see him in. He's the number 1 pick in the NBA.
Oh, he's done. He is very much done. And he's what many people think is a can't-miss prospect. Maybe not the same can't-miss prospect of other years, but he is definitely a surefire number 1 guy. Okay, so let's talk Big Ten. We have Iowa. We have Ohio State. We have Michigan. We have Illinois. But those teams are all going to be sitting pretty in the 1 or 2 line. Maybe OSU falls to a 3, but we're not going to talk about them at this point. We're going to talk about the one team who was in the top 5 of the Big Ten, who no one talks about, and that team is Purdue. They're 18-8. You have first-team Big Tenner and center Trayvon Williams, and you have a 4th-place finish in the Big Ten this year. It's a 5-game winning streak to end the season. Look at the sweet teams that they've swept. Not beaten once, but swept and beaten twice. Ohio State, Michigan State, including one late in the season when Michigan State is actually at its peak Izzo, and Maryland, a team that has been at its highest lately, who will probably also be going to the big dance. There's no real awful losses on this team's resume, however. And one thing that you're going to notice, especially going into the tournament, is there's going to be a lot of teams that are being like oh, we're going to be in the Indiana bubble and we're not going to be able to go home for a month. Guess what? Purdue lives in the Indiana bubble, and starting this week, they will be in the bubble until the end of the tournament. They moved the tournament, Big Ten tournament, from the United Center to Lucas Oil Stadium to make sure everybody stayed in Indianapolis. So they're basically playing home games from this point out. And Purdue gets the double bye going into this going into the Big Ten quarterfinals. So they will play either Ohio State. Did I mention they swept them? Northwestern or Minnesota. Northwestern has been on a roll in the last few weeks, but still they lost 13 in a row at one point this season. And Minnesota has been on a spiral unlike any other since pretty much February. After that, they can play Michigan or Maryland or Michigan State. And again, did I mention they swept Maryland and Michigan State in the regular season? They could play Michigan also in the semifinal. And guess what? Michigan's lost 2 of their last 3 games, and they might think they have a 1 locked, so they may not be in the right frame of mind to play. And then you get a chance to play Illinois or Iowa, and you're probably going to play them for what is the literal definition of gravy. You're either a high 3 or you might even be a 2. So I think Purdue has a chance. And remember, they were just 1 Miracle Virginia shot away 2 years ago from being in the Final Four in 2019. I know
that was one of the best games in the tournament that year, and
possibly the best game in the tournament that year. Virginia played some really good games, but we've always said don't.
Carson Edwards, a household name.
Yes, we've always said to not sleep on a certain coach in the Big Ten in March, which we'll say in a matter of moments. But
and I will.
Don't sleep on Matt Painter either. Matt Painter all of a sudden is getting to be one of the best coaches in America and always makes the most out of little talent. All right.
Yep.
Pop goes the bubble. For the teams who are on the bubble, in order to make it to the bubble in Indianapolis, this bubblicious week might be bursting people's bubbles by the end of it. And this segment and line has been brought to you by my favorite gum, Bubble Yum. Bubble Yum. Make everything a beautiful bubble yum. So
I'm tempted to ask you to repeat that and say it twice as fast, but you know. We don't do
tongue twisters on Zoom, especially with my connection tonight. Anyway, we are moving on to our favorite Bubble Watch segment. Teams who need to do some damage this week to make sure they're part of the field of 68. Anthony, team to watch.
Well, I was hoping our sponsor tonight was going to be Wilkins Coffee, but apparently that's not the case.
Yes! It's coffee that you'll die for. Wilkins Coffee.
Literally. All right, the team, my bubble team to watch is Seton Hall. I mean, you think about a team that has really played themselves out of a tournament at loss bid. They've lost the last 4 games, haven't won a game since February 17th against DePaul, and they blew an 18-point lead against St. John's in a game they desperately needed to have.
And lost by double digits, by the way, at the end of it.
Lost by double digits, believe it or not. So now they find themselves in what is basically an elimination game against St. John's team. Of course, the rabbi will get more into them later on. But look, the offense has kind of disappeared. Has of late, the trio of Jared Rowland, Miles Cannon, and it's a tongue twister, Sandro Bamacasavelli. I don't know if I even got the name correctly, but I'm winging it on this one. Close enough. They combined for 33 points on 11 of 33 shooting in that game. And they normally combine for 50 to 60 points, which is really that gives Seton Hall the offense. If they don't do that, they have no shot at winning. So the Pirates have literally gone from a team that was a last 4 in possibly to one of the first 4 teams out. They're really going to have to go on a UConn Kemba Walker-like run to get into a tournament. I think they're gonna have to run the table. I mean, and that's why like I said, that elimination the game against St. John's is literally an elimination game for both teams, without question. And also, here's a question I like to throw out there. Either team they lose, do you accept the NIT invitation? I mean, there's only 16, And
I don't think a lot of teams are going to. I think there's going to be a lot of teams that pass on that NIT invitation, and I think it's kind of obvious.
It's a different year. It's a different season, entirely different teams. Anyway, I think a lot of teams may pass on it, just going to the off season. Like a lot of players try to stay healthy as much as possible. Since the NIT would require traveling to another city, I think it's in Dallas, the NIT this year. So for Seton Hall, it's pretty much all or nothing. They literally gonna have to run the table to have a shot at getting into the tournament by basically winning the conference tournament.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see how this conference tournament goes out this week, and we'll talk about the.
By the way, it was a year ago. I was at the opening night of Big East tournament, and Jay and I was having a conversation about what we was going to do about the show. And before you know it, I was getting a text messages from you and a few others about the NBA postponing the season. And
we'll talk about that.
March 12th, the world just came to a complete halt. So
March 11th is really my date, but
it's a little eerie. Because every year I've been kind of a spectator at the Garden to the Big East tournament, but to watch it from home, it's a little different this year. But I'm happy to have basketball back and to even have a tournament this year. I mean, I think that was something that we really missed last year. We talked about Hofstra not being able to play even though we won our conference. However,
absolutely.
I'm happy to have college basketball back.
Yeah. I mean, Rabbi, you and I talked about this when we were putting the show together over the weekend, how much that, like, as much as I miss, being in the studio, and being in Manhattan this time of year, the fact that I'm working from home because of the pandemic and I get to watch all of the games of championship week, I'll take that payoff.
Listen, the only time I ever want to be in the city is if me or my wife, like was Monday, is going to get vaccinated, which is the case. So thank you, Javed Center, for having a tight ship. By the way, I think Anthony just wanted to mention it because he didn't want to say Sandro Mambakushvili, who is their nice little star this season, part of one of the band of brothers who has been with Seton Hall before. We've teased the Izzo long enough, Jay. Let's go.
Have we? You think? So, without any further ado, Michigan State is my bubble watch team. And as of now, the Spartans, by virtue of their season-ending win over Michigan, are on the right side of the cut line, as ESPN's Joe Lunardi has them as an 11 seed, getting out from originally being one of the last 4 byes before the Michigan game, which means they've escaped the play-in game for one of the 12 seeds. However, they still have some work to do to ensure that they don't land back on the bubble. Ending winning, soundly beaten in Ann Arbor 3 days before by 19 was a huge boost to State's resume heading into the Big Ten tournament. They faced Maryland in the 8-9 game, and the Terps beat them by 18 back at the end of February in a game where Aaron Henry, Josh Langford, and Rocket Watts shot a combined 9 of 36 from the floor, including 3 of 16 from beyond the arc. Henry's been their most consistent player this season, topping 20 in a game 7 times and 15 or more 12 times. Langford and Watts have struggled to score consistently, though Watts did drop 21 in the win over Michigan behind Henry, who is second on the team in rebounding at 5.5 and first in assists at 3.5. If they escape Maryland, their cross-state rivals await in the Big Ten quarters. Now, despite the win this past Sunday, the odds are not in their favor in a Wolverine-Spartan round 3, though with young Mr. Brooks having his foot in a boot coming out of the end of the Michigan State game, his health may play a little bit of a part in determining how much the Wolverines actually have the odds in their favor. Should they somehow get past Michigan again, their likely opponent in the semis would be the Purdue team that the rabbi mentioned, who swept the season series from State, winning by 1 in January and 10 in February. The odds would not be in their favor there either. So I highly doubt they'll get to the tournament final against the likes of Iowa, who they lost both regular season games to, or the Illini, who they managed to beat in their only matchup this year. So even if they got there, I don't give them a good shot of getting past either of those teams. Spartans are 15-11 overall, 9-11 in the conference. And while their net rating is 67, that Michigan win gave them a 5-point boost. Their net strength of schedule is 6, which is proof that Ezzo schedules really well and that the Big Ten this year is that deep of a conference. They've played 20 of their 26 games against Quad 1 or Quad 2 teams and have 5 Quad 1 wins, including victories over Michigan, Illinois, and Ohio State, the 3 upper echelon teams of the Big Ten. We always say, here it comes, guys. We always say not to sleep on Tom Izzo in March. And as of now, his team should be pretty safe, which is kind of remarkable considering where it was a few weeks ago, going 2-5 after 3 postponements due to the state of Michigan's COVID protocols, which shut down athletics across the country. Look, if they get past Maryland, I think they stay on that last 4 bye line at the worst. Losing to the Terrapins, however, could knock them down to that 12-seed play-in game or worse, depending on how everything else shakes out. It's been a weird season, so who knows how things will shake out. Michigan State has their fate in their own hands right now, and at this time of year, that's what every team hopes for.
Oh, absolutely. I think the fun thing about the Big Ten this year is you're going to see teams who you would look at like, well, how is this team in? And then you're like, oh, yeah, they've beaten this team, this team, this team, and this team. And I think especially with Michigan State, as I said to you, Jay, on Sunday, you beat Ohio State and Illinois, 2 teams that are going to be on that 2 or 3 line. And you look at other teams on the bubble like Boise State.
And Michigan.
And Michigan now, but
in the conference.
Yeah, but if you look at teams like Boise State, Colorado State, Syracuse, the corpse of Syracuse, St. Louis. Yeah, they're teams that have no resume whatsoever to compare to Michigan State. I think they're firmly going to be in the field. Big Steelers, you also have to worry about kind of like BYU can hold off Gonzaga over here. I don't know if that's the case. They're down now, but they're actually BYU was kind of solidly in already, so they would not be a big Steelers.
They are.
But they're not because they're in solidly. So
really?
They're in solidly as a 7, but
well, that's what I mean.
Yeah. I thought you were saying that they would be, but I'm like, they're not. They're in regardless.
They're in.
Not. Okay. I'm going to be lazy and just basically mention the yin to the yang of St. John's here, and I'm just going to talk about their road. They were a team that was kind of, and I can let Jay go to some specifics here because I'm just going to kind of lay out their path. They just beat Seton Hall. Thursday at 3, they'll play Seton Hall again. You knock out Seton Hall, they're done. You also have a team who is literally the very, very last team on Joe Lunardi's bubble watch, and that's Xavier. They don't get to play Xavier, but Xavier has to go through a first-round game tomorrow. Then they play probably UConn. UConn's probably been the second-best team right now in the Big East. Xavier gets knocked out, all of a sudden, St. John's looks pretty good by comparison. St. John's has not necessarily ever been known as a 3-bid league. So even though St. John's –
not for a while.
No. St. John's is currently right now, I think, one of the next 4 out. But there are not too many big conference teams on that list that have chances to make impacts. And I think St. John's having 2 wins in the span of 5 days – against a team that was playing for their tournament lives. And then you would go up against a Villanova team who you've beaten before, who is wounded like crazy. Colin Gillespie, out for the year. Yep. Justin Moore, probably not going to play here in this tournament. Finals appearance might just get St. John's over the hump, and they would be playing a Creighton team who, God knows where their head is at after all of the McDermott stuff this week, or a UConn team who they've beaten before. Mm-hmm. So, big hiccup in the last parts of the season. They don't really have too many tough losses. They lost in overtime at Hinkle Fieldhouse to Butler. They've lost in overtime this year to Georgetown. They're not terrible losses when you lose an OT. The DePaul game is hugely a black mark. Yeah, that's the huge black mark. And if you had to say what's going to keep them from not being in Indianapolis, that's it. But Johnny's got 2 comfortable wins versus Providence and Seton Hall. And again, 4th place team in the Big East, or even a team that gets to play at 6:30 on Saturday night at the Garden on Fox. You know what? All of that could lead to a St. John's bid. Again, you look at the team and you think, is this team one of the 68 best teams in the tournament if they get in? And honestly, the answer is probably yes.
Yeah, I mean, Rabbi, you kind of nailed it on the head there. I mean, right now, Lenardi has them in his next 4 out, and he has them as the last of the 4 teams in the next 4 out. So the Johnnies really do have to make a statement in the Big East tournament. They get, like you said, Seton Hall again on Thursday at 3 p.m., and that's where it starts. I mean, that's a no-brainer. You have to beat Seton Hall.
It's an elimination game.
Yeah, pretty much, because there's no way you even move yourself from next 4 out to first 4 out without beating Seton Hall, because right now Seton Hall is the 4th team of the first 4 out on Lenardi's list. So beating Seton Hall should move them up to that level. Then, down the line, Rabbi, is Xavier who they have up next? Who would be that, or is it in Villanova?
No, they would play the winner of Villanova versus the 8-9 game tomorrow, which I believe is Georgetown Providence.
Okay, so here's the thing, is that there's a Big East team on the 4th team of the last 4 in is a Big East team, and that's Xavier. So the key for St. John's is I think they do have to get to the Big East Finals. I don't know that they necessarily have to win the Big East Finals, but I think they actually have to get there.
Absolutely.
In order to have even a shred of a chance to get out of, to even be considered, for even being on one of the play-in games, for, let's say, one of the 12 seeds. And the thing is I think that with that really bad loss to Marquette, and I'm sorry, it looks closer DePaul, sorry. That loss it's a bad loss. That is a game that they should have won handily. DePaul is an awful team, and they come into your building and they beat you by 5, and the game wasn't even as close as that. That really, I think, put a crimp and put St. John's behind the 8 ball. So I really think that unless they make it finals of the Big East tournament, I don't think they get into the dance. The good thing for them is that, the top teams in the Big East are right now not necessarily, whole. Whether you talk about Villanova minus Gillespie, or you wonder, that right there is not being whole physically. Creighton's the 2 seed, and you wonder about them mentally because of what's been going on with McDermott putting his foot in his mouth.
He is back, by the way, as he is back for the tournament.
So, when you're looking at, having to potentially play Villanova in the semis, that's a winnable game without Gillespie. They've beaten Villanova already once this year. They have the confidence that they can do it because they've already done it. The thing is then, who are you potentially playing in the finals? You're looking at potentially Creighton. Can you beat Creighton? I don't know. If Creighton has their heads together and their headspace is, in the right place, no, you don't. But to me, I think just getting to that game, and if they put up a competitive game, even if they lose, that may be enough to get them into one of the 12-seed play-in games and on the right side of the cut line.
Let me also mention, by the way, before I forget, I was wrong. Xavier's actually the 7. That's how much they've fallen off this year. There you go. Butler in the first round. Creighton, whoever wins that 7-10 game. The 8-9 game is Georgetown Marquette. And honestly, they have as good of a chance to beat Villanova because Providence just wiped the floor with them over the weekend. Yeah. I know there wasn't anything to play for, but Villanova's a very they can either lose a little bit of momentum this week because the committee is going to judge them without Gillespie because Gillespie ain't going to the tournament.
No.
Or they can gain some new momentum and actually create a new identity. Don't know.
Yeah. So, I mean, what's going to be interesting is, is it Creighton in the finals? Is it UConn in the finals? I don't think it matters. I think as long as they get there and they're competitive, they can't get blown out. That they cannot.
Maybe. I mean, I think considering who is again, you have to look at who the competition is. You can't that might be a bad thing to do, but I think if they get there, you're discussing them on Sunday. regardless of blowout or not.
But my whole thing is this: is that if they get there, yes, that moves the needle on the conversation a little bit. I think that if they're competitive, and even if they lose that Big East final, if they lose it by less than 10 and they're competitive throughout that game, then I think that moves the needle enough to get them into one of the play-in games and secure them a spot in the 68.
What does the Agatha Index say about the St. John's, Anthony?
Be nice to my alma mater. Nice to my alma mater.
Right now, I'm looking at Lodori's bracketology right now as we speak, and I agree with Jay. I mean, the two teams that are literally first 4 out, last 4 in, are Big East teams. So basically, you look better than them. The best way to do it is just get into the title game. I don't think St. John's have to win the Big East championship, but
I don't so either.
Yeah, but if you get in there, you're competitive in the championship, even if you lose. I think that would bring a great impression. It would definitely improve their resume as far as getting into one of these post 4 playing games, playing for either the 11th or the 12th spot in one of these one of these regional brackets. So St. John's, they got their work cut out for them, but the first step is Seton Hall. So that's why it's such a very important game for both sides.
Yeah, it's an elimination game for the loser is definitely done. They have no recourse.
Yeah, without question. Like for Seton Hall, it's running the table. They kind of play themselves into that predicament. St. John's is basically it's a step towards maybe getting towards the last 4 in.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, it all starts Thursday afternoon.
Yep. Guys, before we go, since we're actually watching conference tournaments, we're going to watch major conference tournaments actually seemingly finish up this week. Friday will be March 12th, 2021. Yep. And on March 12th, 2020 last year, it really was the first time that we just realized that everything had hit hard. I mean, March 11th was the suspension of the NBA season, but NCAA tournament was canceled. Baseball season was put on pause. NHL season was put on pause. Almost everything
was put on pause.
So, guys, we're a year now into the COVID-19 crisis, and things still aren't the same. The NCAA tournaments are going to be all held in one location in front of less than 25% capacity. So your thoughts on just this whole year and what it's meant to you guys as we really approach an unfortunate moment.
Anthony, go ahead. Start us off.
Like I said, for me, I just remember. I remember when everything seemed to shut down and get off the train station here on Flatbush Avenue. Obviously, I live by the Barclays Center, and to see dead silence at 7 in the evening. There was no one in the streets. There were no bars open. There was literally nothing going on. It was completely – that was the hit me that we are living in a very different time. I've been more impressed with seeing somehow some – like the NBA and baseball and the National Hockey League and just recently the NFL, how they've been able to just be able to complete a season despite – very difficult circumstances and how COVID has really just held a cloud, not just in the sports world, but just in entire world completely. Like I said, it's been a year into this. Hopefully there's a light at the end of the tunnel. We can finally get on the other side of this. But it's been different doing a show. I mean, obviously, S3 has been kind of holding the fort down. We miss being in MNN, and I obviously miss see you guys in person, number one. But also, Nisa, Sean, Steve,
Pedro.
Nolan, and Pedro, the whole cast and crew. I think that's why I really was so appreciative of doing a Christmas show. Even though clearly it was a little different than normal, getting to talk to everyone again. But like I said, I'm hoping that at some point, maybe later this year, we got to actually see the inside MNN again. I drove past it a few times, but to see the inside of it again, to be able to actually be on a studio set. It would be great to be able to do that at some point down, in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I mean, I remember the March 11th very clearly. I was in the middle of I was doing my final research for our bracketology show, which was going to be the next day, the 12th. I remember talking to Anthony when what went down at the Big East tournament went down. I remember trading texts with the rabbi and with Pedro, our executive producer, and Steve Ferguson, the other founding member of the show. And we're all talking about, do we cancel the show? Do we call M&N to find out? Do we go ahead and just do it anyway? I mean, we came to the decision, as an executive council to just, cancel the show. This looks like everything's going to get shut down anyway. Let's just cancel it. Wait and see what happens. And the world literally came to a halt. And the thing I remember we knew the NBA was going to shut down. We knew the NHL was going to pause eventually. We knew, that things were going to stop. The thing that really, gutted me was hearing March Madness getting canceled. You guys know, I sing the refrain every year that this is the time of year. Much as I enjoy all of the shows we do, you guys know this is one of my favorites. The fact that, I wasn't going to be sitting at home that first Thursday and Friday with my feet up watching college basketball from noon to midnight for 2 straight days, and then plus going into the weekend. Even on like a wholly different level, forced to work from home, something I usually have spent my career, pushing back against. The question of, am I going to be able to see my parents? Am I going to be able to see my siblings, my nieces and nephews? But the thing is that as the time wore on, once we got past that initial week, the rabbi and I started talking, and we're like, we got to figure out a way to get the show back in some shape, manner, or form. Now, the rabbi and I had been talking on and off for years about potentially doing something like this on the weeks where we weren't live from M&N, because there was many an off week where some really good stuff happened in the sports world, and the two of us would bemoan the fact that we weren't on the air. So when Rabbi came to me and he said, "Hey, I figured out a way to do this through Zoom. We can, do the show that way." And then when he figured out how to record it live via Facebook so we could live stream, I was ecstatic. And then it came, well, what are we going to talk about? And the things that, if you think about this, guys, I keep trying to find the silver linings as this year has progressed. And one of them has been, think about the things that the types of shows that we got to do in March, in April, in May, before sports came back. Best this, greatest that, top 3 this, whatever. We got to do a whole host of those type of shows that we would never have been able to do were we still operating at M&N, because we had a very strict schedule. We were on every other week. We only had 30 minutes. But here now, we can be on every week, do 90 minutes, longer if needs be. I mean, if you think about this, guys, would we have been able to do the type of NFL draft show we did this year if we were at the studio? No. Or would we be able to do the same type of NBA draft show if we were in the studio? No. So there were a lot of cool things that we got to do. I mean, think about the amount of times that we got to have Joe on as Joe Tafaro as a full participant on a football-based show, to be able to do that.
The baseball show also.
Right.
Which was
having,
really good.
Katie and Greg. I mean, to be able to have that. And, and I'm looking forward to having the two of them on again as they are looking to coming back. To be able to do this, the way we've been able to do this show, expand on it, and in a lot of ways improvement, this has been fun. I've really enjoyed the way we've, revised the show through this format. So to me, that's been a silver lining. The fact that, I still have a job, that, through the pandemic, did not cut people, did not cut salaries, did not cut benefits. I was able to keep working. Silver lining there. I know that a lot of people did not have that. one of my siblings included. To actually, as things wore on and information became more, available to us on how things were and were not, to actually being able to get to see my nieces and nephews, some of them. Having gone 6 months without seeing Nisa and her kids, my niece and nephew, Nisa and I had never gone 6 months without seeing each other. That's just something best friends just don't do. So, and the flip side of it is now that they're back, I'm able to see them. So, you have to find the silver linings where you can. When sports came back, even though they did not come back 100% in the way we were used to, but to actually get sports back was amazing in and of itself. I mean, for us here, because this is what we do, this is what we talk about. This is the backbone of the show. But we all know the place that sports has in society as a way to bring people together, as a way to heal when, in times of turmoil. We all very much vividly and viscerally remember what it was like to see the Mets and the Yankees step onto the field after 9/11. So to have that come back, we all knew that sports was going to be more than just sports because of what was going on in the country. I mean, for us to be able to do the shows in the wake of the incidents of violence in Minneapolis and Kenosha shows that we never really touched on under normal circumstances. Those were difficult shows to do, but I think they were some of our best work because of it. Because I think we went above and beyond and we put ourselves out there talking about things that potentially make us uncomfortable. But you know what? The whole point is to have those uncomfortable conversations, even if it's through the prism of the world of sports. So, now that we seem to hopefully are turning a corner and we're heading, back towards something that, will ultimately resemble what the world was before this happened. I don't think it's ever going to be 100% that way again, but I think we will get back to some reasonable facsimile of it is going to be great. But I got to tell you, with everything that went on, both the pandemic, the protesting, the issues in, with our government and everything, I got to say the fact that this show was a constant from the point in which the rabbi said, March 26th, we're picking it back up. We're going to do it every week. His wedding's ridiculously gray cloud that has been the last 365 days. It has been that, and I am thankful for it and to be able to get on, to come on this platform and just, spend 90 minutes, 2 hours, whatever it is, talking sports with the three of you.
Well, I could say more, but not only can I not say it better than Jay said, we're out of time because Jay ran over all of the points that I was going to say. I'm kidding. But
I will say this. It's been a great honor to do the show every week since March 26th with you guys. And like I said, the all the various topics, even the more uncomfortable ones, I think it really it made the show fun. It gave us some sense of normalcy in a time that none of us had that kind of normalcy. I mean, we went along. Each of us went a long time without having to see family. I didn't work for a while. Rabbi as well. And thankfully, we both have jobs full time and working and everything else. But like I said, hopefully, we're turning a corner on this, and there is a light at the end of the tunnel. To quote the late Marty Schottenheimer, there's a gleam, and we'll start to reach that gleam sooner than later.
Rabbi, take us home.
I will very much take us home. Well, it's been a very, very interesting year, and it's not stopping. We're not we're not magically going back to a studio. We have more shows to do at home until we really get back to normal, whenever that normal actually is. So next week, God willing, we have our NCAA tournament preview show. Get excited.
Oh, yeah.
Plus, for the first time, I will introduce to both of you the blind topic, a topic that I will pick that you will not know about and you will have to react to. The topic will be general basketball. So keep that in mind while we go into next week. All right.
Okay.
So for Corey Kispert, Agatha, Julius Randle,
Wanda Maximoff,
and everybody in between, and also Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait. My name is Steven Rabinowitz. Thank you for joining us on the Sports Lines. Next week at 9:30, unless God knows what happens, we will be live with you, and we will be live with you on Facebook.com/OnTheSportsLines. Remember, the tournament is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So you will not miss any action by tuning to us. So set your dials now. YouTube.com/OnTheSportsLines on demand anytime after this show. And you can watch as the years went by back in 2019 and see how bad our picks were for the bubble back then. And you can laugh at them. I didn't make any picks, so I'm Anyway, you can also go to Twitter, right, Chuck?
At ONTH Sportslines.
All right, guys, this has been fun. This basketball extravaganza is over. We have more basketball to talk about next week. The madness is here, guys. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.